Foreign Minister Wang Yi holds international press conference in Beijing. Wang Yi calls for sincerity and cooperation in Sino-US relations for a win-win situation. In the Iran war, Donald Trump said the U.S. is not willing to engage in talks with the current Iranian leadership. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. Foreign Minister Wang Yi held an international press conference on the sidelines of the fourth session of the 14th National People's Congress. Sakir Ib reports from Beijing.
Foreign Minister Wang Yi held a press conference on Sunday morning when he answered questions of journalists from China and overseas, including those from the U.S. and Russia, on Beijing's foreign policy and external relations. Wang Yi noted the world today is characterized by intertwined changes and turmoil, with wars and conflicts. In times of instability, China will uphold fairness and justice and oppose unilateral bullying.
元首外交是中国外交的定盘星。
Wang said head of state diplomacy is the cornerstone of Chinese diplomacy, which is planned and directed by President Xi Jinping. It provides the most valuable stability and certainty in a turbulent world. One of the focuses of the press conference was Sino-US relations. With U.S. President Donald Trump returning to the White House, relations between the two countries have fluctuated. Wang Yi expressed his hope that this year will be a landmark year for Sino-US relations, moving towards a healthy and stable future.
中美都是大国。
Wang said China and the United States are both big countries. Neither side can remodel the other, but they can choose how they want to engage, which is to commit to the spirit of mutual respect, to hold the bottom line of peaceful coexistence, and to strive for win-win cooperation. It serves the interests of Chinese and American people and also aligns with the expectation of the international community. He said if they have sincerity, they will expand the list of areas with common ground and shorten the list where they have difference. Wang said the agenda of high-level exchanges is already on the table. What the two sides need to do now is to create a suitable environment, manage the differences that do exist, and remove unnecessary disruptions. During the 90-minute press conference, the Foreign Minister Wang Yi answered 20 questions from local and foreign journalists. Sakarib, TVB News, Beijing.
Foreign Minister Wang Yi said that the choice of Japanese leader would determine the relations of China and Japan. Wang also stressed that the Taiwan question is China's internal affair. Most Night reports.
In a press conference, some reporters asked Wang Yi about the China-Japan relations. Wang said the future of the two countries' relations will hinge on Japan's choice, referring to Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi's remarks on what circumstances surrounding Taiwan would constitute as a survival-threatening situation for Japan, on which Tokyo can activate its self-defense forces. Wang questioned Japan's intention. He said since Taiwan affairs are purely China's internal affair, what gives Japan the right to interfere with them? Wang added that the 1.4 billion people of China would never allow anyone to justify colonialism or reverse history's verdict on aggression. Speaking of the Taiwan question, Wang stressed that the issue remains China's internal affair and a red line that must not be crossed or trampled on. He criticized Taiwan's Democratic Progressive Party's pursuit of their separatist agenda, saying it's the factor which undermined the peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. On the South China Sea issue, Wang said China is confident in removing interference, bridging differences, expanding common ground, and reaching an agreement as soon as possible. The foreign minister hopes that the Philippines, the ASEAN chair this year, will assume a positive role to maintain peace and stability in the region. Moments 9, TVB News.
Foreign Minister Wang Yi criticized certain countries for indiscriminately using violence to start color revolutions and urged all warring parties in the Middle East to cease fighting and begin negotiations. As tensions continue to escalate between the U.S., Israel, and Iran, Foreign Minister Wang Yi said China should maintain a stance of being objective and fair and called upon the belligerents to implement a ceasefire and avoid prolonging the war.
也是一场对各方
Wang said the war should never have happened, adding that the conflict benefits no one. He noted that history in the Middle East has repeatedly shown that violence fails to solve any problem, stressing that war will only intensify hatred in the region and even create new forms of danger. China's top diplomat emphasized the people of the Middle East are the owners of their home region, and that regional affairs should be left solely to their nations.
中方历来主张以和为贵。
Wang said any organization of color revolutions or regime change will remain unpopular with the people. He said China has always stressed on the importance of peace and urged all warring parties to return to the negotiating table to resolve any disputes. This, as the foreign minister did not openly criticize the U.S. and Israeli militaries for starting the conflict in the Middle East. He emphasized that might does not make right, and that world governance should not return to the law of the jungle. Wang further said innocent civilians should not become sacrifices for war. The foreign minister added great powers should be fair and just in their contribution to the peaceful development of the Middle East. Wang highlighted China's strategic partnership and friendship with Middle Eastern countries and hopes to work with them to implement the Global Security Initiative. The U.S.-Israeli joint forces have for the first time attacked Iran's civilian industrial facility, a week after they initiated Operation Epic Fury against the Islamic Republic. Tehran said it has detained several American soldiers, a claim that Washington refuted. U.S. President Donald Trump has reportedly weighed interest in deploying ground forces into Iran if there are good reasons, and said he's not interested in negotiating with the Iranian government for now. Danny Zhou reports.
Fireball and intensive blasts were reported in Tehran late Saturday after Israeli warplanes bombed oil storage facilities in the Tehran oil depot that supplies the capital and neighboring northern provinces. The Associated Press reported it to be the first ever strike on an Iranian civilian facility by the US-Israeli forces since the start of the war. In addition, the Mehrabad airport, Tehran's second largest airport, was rocked by massive Israeli airstrikes overnight. Israel says it destroyed 16 jets of the Revolutionary Guards, claiming Iranian forces were using the airport to transport weapons and funds. Sources say US President Donald Trump has discussed with aides and Republican officials about the idea of sending ground troops to possibly target Iran's nuclear facilities and energy infrastructure. Trump, who deems the US side has an advantageous position, has signaled that they are not willing to engage in talks with the current Iranian leadership.
We're not looking to settle. They'd like to settle. We're not looking to settle.
Following the killing of the late Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, a three-man council, including the president, a senior cleric and the head of the judiciary, has taken on his role. Local media reported that the Assembly of Experts is slated to hold a session on Sunday to pick the next supreme leader to guide Iran. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian was grilled by hardliners for his Saturday speech, apologizing for fire-at-will strikes on Gulf nations. Some lawmakers have accused Pezeshkian of taking a soft and unprofessional stance, saying the remarks were unacceptable. The president subsequently took to social media to repeat his earlier statements in a post, but deleted his conciliatory comments toward Iran's neighbors. Pezeshkian has threatened to step up attacks on American targets throughout the Middle East in video comments on Sunday. He said Iran does not want to wage a war against Arab countries, many of which host American facilities, adding the US was trying to pit the region's nations against one another. Meanwhile, the Iranian military made clear that places that launch attacks on Iran will continue to be targeted in their retaliation. During an interview with CNN, a shopkeeper in Tehran said he's quite worried about the escalating situation but has no choice. He claimed the shop could not be shut down because it needs to provide residents with daily necessities. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
Some Middle East countries continue to be affected by the conflict in Iran as the U.S. embassy in Iraq was attacked and a building in Kuwait City was ablaze in the early hours of Sunday. This, as Saudi Arabia said it would retaliate if Iran continues to attack Saudi territory or energy facilities. Meanwhile, there were contrasting protests in Italy, one commemorating the Ayatollah, the other in support of military intervention by the United States and Israel. Tracy Furness has more.
Flames were seen leaping into the night sky as a massive fire tore through a high-rise building in Kuwait City early Sunday. The cause of the blaze was unclear, but it erupted as the country suffered a wave of Iranian drone and missile attacks. Over the past week, Iran has struck US military bases and facilities in the Middle East. Kuwait, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, among other Gulf states, have intercepted drones and missiles originating from Iran in recent days. Kuwait military said fuel storage tanks at the country's international airport have also become targets of drone attacks. An explosion also occurred late Saturday night near Erbil Airport in Iraq's Kurdistan region. Meanwhile, thousands of Shiite Muslims in Pakistan's city of Karachi attended a rally to mourn Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and other Iranian officials killed in US-Israeli airstrikes last week. People holding portraits of Khamenei and chanting slogans such as "Death to Israel" and "Down with US."
Ayatollah Khamenei.
And in Milan, Italy, hundreds gathered at two opposing demonstrations Saturday, one in support of military intervention by the US and Israel against the Ayatollah's regime in Iran, and the other to commemorate the Ayatollah. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
The broadening Middle East conflict is putting strategically located Sri Lanka in a delicate position as it tries to balance humanitarian obligations, international maritime law, and its long-standing policy of non-alignment. Sri Lanka has transferred more than 200 sailors from an Iranian naval vessel to shore after it sought assistance while anchored outside the country's waters. Tracy Furness again.
A Sri Lankan naval vessel approaches the Iranian vessel Iris Boucher. A Sri Lankan Navy spokesperson said 204 sailors from the Iris Boucher were brought to Welisara Naval Base near the capital Colombo, where they underwent border control procedures and medical tests. About 15 others were left aboard the ship with Sri Lankan naval personnel for assistance because they had reported a fault with the ship. Sri Lanka's president said that authorities had decided to take control of the Iranian vessel after discussions with officials and the ship's captain, as one of the engines had failed. The Navy spokesperson said the ship would be taken to the port of Trincomalee in eastern Sri Lanka and remain in Sri Lankan custody until further notice. Iranian media have described the Iris Boucher as a Navy logistics ship. The Sri Lankan government took custody of the vessel after the US sank the Iranian warship, the Iris Dena, off the country's coast on Wednesday. This as Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said Saturday that the Italian government is deploying a frigate to Cyprus and that Rome is in constant dialogue with France, Germany and the United Kingdom to prevent further escalation of the conflict in the Middle East. She added Italy is not part of the conflict and does not intend to become part of it. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Israel says it hit Iranian-affiliated commanders in the center of Beirut after a strike pounded a hotel there. The death toll in Lebanon over the past week has topped 300 people since the start of the latest conflict between Hezbollah and Israel a week ago. In a statement issued this morning, the Israeli military announced it targeted key commanders of the Lebanese branch of Iran's elite Quds Force of the Revolutionary Guards. Explosions were heard by residents nearby the Ramada Hotel in Beirut's Bushehr district, a popular tourist destination. Lebanon's health ministry said at least 4 people were killed and 10 others injured in the fatal drone strike. And still ahead, police commissioner reveals new measures to strengthen security in Wanful court. Chief executive pays tribute to women on International Women's Day. And Commerce Chief says impact of the Iran war on Hong Kong in general is limited. Welcome back. Speaking on the recent theft cases at Wanful Court, Police Commissioner Joe Chow said 4 security measures need to be strengthened on site. They include increasing manpower, limiting the amount of cash that workers can carry when entering the damaged buildings, and recording whether there are significant properties inside affected units prior to the entry of workers. 3 renovation workers were earlier arrested on suspicion of stealing jewelry inside a unit in Wang Tai House, with authorities announcing a need to strengthen local security measures. This as Police Commissioner Joe Chow said renovation work at the site will resume on Monday and pointed out 4 measures that will be strengthened. They include increasing police manpower patrolling the housing estate and the setting up of lockers on site where workers must place all their belongings except their mobile phones. Renovation workers are also barred from carrying more than $500 of cash when entering the buildings. Prior to the workers entering the units, the police will record whether notable properties remain inside designated units. Officers will subsequently search the workers with metal detectors after they complete their work. The police commissioner said at its peak, around 800 workers entered and left the Wanful court housing estate in the same period. He stressed the police will also strengthen patrols around nearby areas. Chow noted that authorities received 81 related reports as of 5 p.m. today. He noted that one such case involved credit card fraud, stressing that the police will follow up on the matter. Today is International Women's Day. Chief Executive John Lee said the government will continue to support women's development in Hong Kong. Musinai reports.
Cheers!
The International Women's Day reception was held at the central government offices. Chief Executive John Lee and his wife attended the event alongside other secretaries and government officials. In his speech, Lee highlighted the importance of women in society and at home. Noting that females account for about 54% of Hong Kong's population, Lee said the qualities of women resemble the features of 4 traditional Chinese silk fabrics.
Each fabric has its own character. One represents clarity and poise with which you balance family and career. Another symbolizes inclusive spirit, bringing people together and building consensus. A third embodies resilience, soft yet unbreakable in the face of challenges. And the last captures women's confidence and grace as you represent Hong Kong on the world stage.
Secretary for Home and Youth Affairs Alex Mack said authorities had appropriated more than $66 million from the Women Empowerment Fund since its establishment in 2023. Mack said the fund had supported over 450 female development projects. During the ceremony, the CE mentioned that the second Hong Kong Family and Women's Development Summit will be held on March 31st. The event will discuss ways to enhance female development and support them in seizing opportunities. Musinai, TVB News.
As the conflict between the U.S. and Israel and Iran has spread to other Middle Eastern countries, Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development Algernon Yao said the overall impact on Hong Kong is limited. Yao said on a TVB program that Hong Kong's Economic and Trade Office in Dubai reported that the local market is calm. Some people may be leaving, which has some negative impact on the local economy, but overall it remains very stable. On how the conflict will affect Hong Kong, Yao said the import and export trade may be more affected because the Strait of Hormuz is closed. But Yao said Hong Kong's import and export market is very extensive, and the Middle East is just one part of it. Hong Kong's largest import and export trade markets are ASEAN countries and some regional comprehensive economic partnership countries. Yao said the government plans to explore more new markets. He said there may be an impact on Hong Kong, but it may not be too significant. U.S. President Donald Trump said the United States will turn its attention to Cuba after the war with Iran and suggested that the administration will cut a deal with Havana. This as ex-Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem made her debut in her new role as Special Envoy for the Shield of the Americas, described as a new U.S. security initiative in the Western Hemisphere. Tracy Furness has more.
As we achieve a historic transformation in Venezuela, we're also looking forward to the great change that will soon be coming to Cuba. Cuba's at the end of the line. They're very much at the end of the line. They have no money, they have no oil, they have a bad philosophy, they have a bad regime that's been bad for a long time. And they want to negotiate, and they are negotiating with Marco and myself and some others. And I would think a deal would be made very easily with Cuba.
Meanwhile, Kristi Noem, who was fired by U.S. President Donald Trump as Homeland Security Secretary on Thursday, had the chance Saturday to make her debut in her new role as a Special Envoy for the Shield of the Americas, a new security initiative that will focus on the Western Hemisphere. In the Venezuelan capital of Caracas, over 20 prisoners have been freed from a detention center as relatives and activists continue to press for the release of all political prisoners. Many of those held behind bars were arrested in November on terrorism and other charges. Families say they were arbitrarily detained without due process. Relatives who have been camping on the streets for the past 2 months rejoiced over the news outside a detention center in Caracas known as Zone 7. Some of the released prisoners were union and political leaders who shouted freedom and long live Venezuela when they exited the jail. Venezuela adopted a landmark amnesty law last month that promised the unconditional release of hundreds. It was the latest policy reversal on the South American country after the U.S. raid that captured then-President Nicolas Maduro. But the prisoners freed on Saturday said they were not released under amnesty and that they still had restrictions and couldn't speak freely to the media. And that's the news. Thanks for watching.